Welcome. You're listening to The Aligned Self, Conversations in Creating a Conscious and Abundant Life. This is Daniel Denovi. I'll be your guide and host. Let's see just where we can take this. Hello, friend, and welcome into this Quotable Monday. Today I'm featuring a quote from an absolute genius. I just love this guy. He's been on the spiritual path for over 50 years, a psychic intuitive, a peak performance coach, a workshop and seminar leader who over the years has worked with over 10,000 people. He's a firewalk instructor, and basically he's an all-around wise guy. Well, if you haven't guessed it by now, the person I'm featuring in this Quotable Monday is me, Daniel Denovi. And the quote is, when you can listen to your intuition when it's a whisper, then your life unfolds like magic. This is the still small voice of your intuition. When I first began studying about intuition to expand my own experience of my intuitive guidance, it came up a lot in the literature that I was reading about this still small voice. Well, that didn't really make sense to me because it didn't really occur to me as a voice, but rather it was a knowing, just a knowing, like without knowing how I knew. And that was a real key definition, knowing without knowing how I knew. There was no rational line of thought that led to this knowing, no way I could have gathered the information from different sources that I'd been exposed to. It occurred just as a knowing. And even though it didn't show up as a discernible voice in my experience in the early years, I guess you could say that knowing was the quiet aspect of it. That intuition, that guidance did not come in with bells and whistles. It wasn't a screaming alarm. It was just a quiet knowing. And since I've developed my intuitive awareness, my psychic gifts, it does show up as a still, quiet voice. A discernible voice has a particular tone, has a particular cadence. The still part of that voice is that it is not imbued with a lot of emotional intensity. It is just a quiet voice, a calmly stated utterance. When it shows up, I just know at this point that it is coming through me, not from me. When this voice does show up, it's usually just behind my left ear, kind of just sitting on my shoulder. It has a location in my mind. And as you begin discerning the intuitive guidance as it occurs in your body, you're going to find it has a particular place. It has a particular rhythm. It has a particular feeling to it that is uniquely yours. Now, I began actually using the quote or the phrase, when you can tune into your intuition when it's a whisper, your life unfolds like magic. That actually arose out of my firewalking workshops when I was teaching firewalking. Because when you're standing in front of the coals, when you feel the fear, that is a screaming alarm. But that fear comes up only because we're focusing on the worst case scenario. We're focusing on the obstacle that is before us. When I began tuning in to the intention, which is to walk to the other side, the impetus to walk or the acknowledgement that it was time to take the first step showed up as a whisper. It was just a gentle pull forward. And so I had to listen carefully for that little whisper, that initial small urging, and then lean into it. There's a certain trust involved. And listening to that whisper and leaning into it and actually moving forward based on that guidance, that's when my life began to unfold like magic. So I was actually speaking from my own personal experience. I also knew, based on experience, that when I did not heed that whisper, when I was not tuning in, when I was not listening, my life began to take on a struggle. It began a lot harder. I would end up on detours. I'd actually initiate relationships, which I knew that weren't necessarily the best for me because it was whispered to me, but I didn't want to listen. I went ahead anyways, and it was, in some ways, it was a detour. It was an expenditure of energy that I probably would have been better off not doing. I learned anyways, everything's happening for our benefit. Everything's happening for our own education and edification. But it was a struggle. And this is why I say when you can listen to that intuitive guidance when it's a whisper, then your life begins to unfold like magic. You call in synchronicity. You call in different events that are totally there for your support. They're aligned with your higher self. They're aligned with your path, your mission. You're always getting guidance. In my intuition course, I talk about 10,000 whispers, and I probably have talked about it in an earlier podcast episode way back when I first started, that the universe is always whispering to us, always revealing the secrets of the path before us. It shows up as 10,000 whispers at any given moment. We cannot not be guided. Now, we cannot listen, but the guidance is always available to us. So it's never this feeling as if, I wonder if the universe is showing up. I wonder if God, Goddess, all that is showing up to support me. Well, they're always there. It's just that we're not the ones tuning in. We're not the ones listening. We're not the ones paying attention. So evolving your intuitive guidance or developing that pathway or that communication with that inner rapport takes a little practice. It takes practice in listening to the intuition, listening to the whisper, leaning into it, and then reflecting on what was the result. How did it turn out? And then in that reflection, you ascertain, you discern, what did it feel like? Where did it occur? What was the quality of that communication? And in that reflection, you began to, like I said, discern and make it distinct out of all the other messages in your head. That way, the next time it shows up, you can actually feel it, look at it, hear it, and know that is intuitive guidance. That's coming through me, not from me. It's been my experience that this communication, this inner rapport, has always been available to us. It was ready and at hand. We listened to it when we were a child. But through social conditioning, we began not listening. We began not trusting it. And so knowing that we don't typically, or we haven't exercised that muscle to tune into our intuitive guidance, when you're faced with a decision, or let's say you have children as well, and they're faced with a choice, rather than you tell them what the appropriate path is, have them check in with their vibes. How does it feel? Does it feel expanding? Does it feel contracting? Does it feel light and airy? Does it feel attractive? Does it feel like a pull forward, or is it repulsing back? Is it feeling heavy or like a burden? This is also the questioning. This is also the approach that I'm encouraging you to participate in. In front of every major decision, check in with your vibes. How does it feel? Does it feel expansive? Does it feel contracting? I've already given you the questions. So this check-in is where you get into neutral. You just kind of stare off into the distance. You might have to close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths, and ask yourself, how does it feel? What is the vibe check? What is it revealing to you? I just revealed to you the process that I went through myself. And if you go along the same process, over time, you'll hone in and develop a distinct intuitive voice where you can actually know that it's your intuition and trust it. Now, if you want assistance in this, I do offer that in my intuition course contained in the Wisdom Vault. And you can find out more about that at yesdaniel.com. I suggest, though, that if you're interested in developing your intuitive guidance sooner rather than later, that you join the Wisdom Vault and put yourself in the intuition course. That instead of years, you can do it in days or months. Because not only do I give you this basic outline of how to tune in, I actually have several exercises that assist you in developing an awareness of subtle energy, an awareness of the inner vibration that's going on inside you. I also provide you with a vocabulary for tuning in to your kinesthetic vibrations, your bodily signals. Remember, you can ultimately trust your still small voice. When you can listen to your intuition when it's a whisper, your life unfolds like magic. Until next time, this is your friend and host, Daniel DeNovi, urging you to follow your bliss. Live your life from inner signals. Be inner directed as you engage in the epic adventure.